guys, so this is a series. We're doing an analysis and looking into very closely on the songwriting style of each of the BTS members. We're looking into their exposition, their kind of poetry, how they use how they establish the relationship between the beat and the melody and the lyrics and the overall creative direction, because as you know, they are fully in control of their own creatives. So just a caveat, the one thing I won't be able to do is actually pinpoint how they use the nuances of their own language, because I'm not a native Korean speaker. I know some words, definitely not capable of talking about the nuances of the language. So on that part, I won't be able to do much. So, but on other aspects, I tried my very best to really dive deep into their songwriting style. Okay, so if you end up liking this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also subscribe and hit that notification button, and share the video if you can, because that's really helping my channel. Okay, let's get on with it. Suga.
His beats are like heartbeats. It supplies his music with life. Especially in Suga's early works, he would use a consistent beat throughout his songs. He relied on his flow and melody to mark the chapters or sections of his songs. There are two things to note about this. One, it is harder for any singer or songwriter. Thinking of a different melody or a flow by itself is hard. And then you have to rely on it to make the song sound vibrant or even decent. Second, this is reminiscent of street rappers. Rappers who started on the streets with nothing but someone beatboxing, if at all, would spit rhymes backed by their own flows to win battles. Suga, being an underground rapper, seemed to have taken this discipline to the early days of his solo releases. The core DNA remains. Half of his second mixtape, D2, he started marking the verses of his songs by adding different instruments. But if you listen close enough, you would actually hear that he still kept the same beat throughout the song. In D-Day, for example, he changed the bridge, but the rest of the song maintained the same beat. In Hegum, he changed the bridge, but the rest of the song maintained the same beat. In Polar Night and Snooze, the same beat actually run through the entire song. He is a storyteller. I have had a lot of fans tell me that Suga writes imagery in his song, and that seems to be his signature. While he does this, it isn't the only thing he does. He cannot be pigeonholed into one thing because it's just so prolific. And one of the things he did consistently in the beginning was to tell a story. He is a storyteller of his own story. Agust D, D2, and D-Day, as we know, actually form a trilogy. Agust D explores his beginnings, from experiencing opposition from his parents to pursue music, to moving to Seoul, to train, to his debut, and to the insults he received from other underground rappers. In D2, he starts experiencing some success, but his emotions remain in chaos, navigating the person he has become to the person other people expected him to be, to the person his fans wanted him to be. In these two albums, he would actually move from anger to confidence to cockiness to depression and then back again. It felt like an accurate depiction of what he explained he was actually going through at that time. It was in D-Day that he started to settle. He started finding peace, it seemed. He actually finally was able to look at the world with, for lack of a better word, fondness. Yet, these three albums actually tell his story, not only his thoughts, but his actual story, experiences, his emotions, and how it actually affected his actions and his evolution. A metamorphosis. It was when he started writing and producing for other artists outside of his own team that he actually showed a different side of himself as a songwriter and producer. His collaborations and work with other artists actually showed us that he is also a nurturer, a fortress of strength, a cradle of gentleness, and many more. This doesn't mean, in my opinion, that he wasn't all this before he started collaborating with other artists outside of BTS. I just think that Agust D, D2, and D-Day have always been meant to tell his story. In fact, he did say that D2 and D-Day were written so closely together that at some point he didn't want to release D-Day anymore because he felt like he was past that stage. He draws a lot from local culture and linguistics. One of the things that really make it hard for non-native Korean speakers like me to truly understand and appreciate the way Suga writes is the intensity of his attachment to his own culture. He picks a lot of Korean culture, street slangs, and local tradition and incorporate them in his songs. For example, in 724148, there is a line that said, "Then drag my tired body to school and fall asleep there to become 20 years old. My graduation scene is actually quite shitty." It is important to note that in Korea, traditionally, no students actually fail a grade or repeats a level up until grade 12. For as long as you attend classes, you will actually go up to the next level. Knowing that, it will actually give us a better understanding of what he was trying to say in that line. He wanted to communicate that during that time, he wasn't really alive. He was just trying to survive. In the last, he used a certain term, smegma. I have never heard of that word before in all the years I've been listening to K-pop or even watching K-drama. But it's apparently a commonly used slang that means something small or insignificant or dirty. Literally, however, smegma is a terminology that pertains to a body part's accumulated dirt if the person who has that body part isn't so hygienic. I'm just going to leave that to your imagination, or you can check it if you want, but don't. In Agust D, there is a line that many translated to be, "I don't give an F while you're wasting your time." However, if you actually directly translate the actual Korean sentence into English, it would actually say, "while you're digging the ground." Apparently, digging the ground for no purpose is used as a punishment in the military. He also said, "I'm sorry that I'm the one who took your bowl of rice," or "food boy." Koreans actually use bowl of rice or food to refer to income. No different from how we refer to a family's highest earner in English as the breadwinner. He did give that line a spin though, because at the end, when he used the word boy, he said it as if he was talking to a dog, the savage Yonggi. But one of the biggest discovery I had, courtesy of some of my Korean friends, was actually in Cypher Point 2. He has a line that said, "Thanks to your fanaticism, you're bad since birth." Initially, that really didn't make sense to me, so I had to ask some of my Korean friends. This is a little complicated and I hope I can explain it as well as my Korean friends did to me. Mote is actually a vernacular for since birth. There is another word that sounds similar to mote, which is mote, which means no ability to do something. So in his original line, forgive my Korean, he said, "Shinang shimi ga dokandoke, non teseng buto, komnamote." He was actually trying to say as if you were born a fanatic, a religious fanatic since birth, cultish almost. Korea has diversity of religion, but sometimes they look down on people who were actually born into a strict religion, especially if the person is proud of the fact that they were born into that religion. That fanaticism Suga used in the song referred to this kind of people, those that were born into a certain belief. They think that they were manipulated and brainwashed and that they don't know any better. He compared those fanatics to underground artists or fans who continue to believe only music from underground artists may be considered true music. In he said, "Today the player enters the scene, grabbing their chance, they take the bait, and then dong dong dong." Here, he actually used an old Korean mainstream movie practice. The player he was referring to is an old movie device that refers to the main character or one of the main characters who is arrogant. He thinks highly of himself. Usually, there would be a standard line in old Korean movies where the player would actually announce he will destroy everybody and that everyone is a shit and he's the bomb. In this part of the song, he is referring to those who are arrogant as the player in old Korean movies. Outdated, has been, and isn't really any good. There's really more, but let's move on. Long form rhymings. I will not be spending a lot of time on this because it really makes me feel uncomfortable to be talking about something very local. So I will just do a little bit and then later I will get someone, a native speaker, to actually explain this further. But Suga actually rhymes bar to bar instead of just rhyming the end of a bar. It kind of sounds like music, I guess. There's a certain musicality in there. There are several parts of a bar that rhymes in the next bar, not just the end of the bar. One example is in Cypher Point 3. I'm going to play the first two lines of Suga with the romanized lyrics and underline parts of the two bars that actually sort of rhyme.
Agust D. 두 번째 길거리를 걸어다니며 수근된
I hope you were able to recognize that there was some rhyming even in the middle of the bar. I won't blame you if this flies over your head. As I've said, I will try to get a native speaker to expound on this. He complements the narrative of the singers or artists he works with. When he features in a song, more often than not, he talks to the main artist rather than the listeners. In Isora's song request, Isora was actually talking about someone he misses to someone else, presumably the audience, and then he would shift to the DJ to request for a song. When Suga enters with his verse, it was him talking to Isora instead of rapping about something directed to the listener. He did this too with Ayu's 8. Ayu was actually talking about her youth. In Suga's verse, he talks to Ayu about how they should remain in their youth together instead of addressing the audience. He did this with Lilith, with Halsey. Halsey was actually talking about how relationships actually end up not so good. And then Suga enters and talks to Halsey about how it's actually both their fault and not just Halsey's fault. He did this even in Girl of My Dreams. Instead of expounding on Juice WRLD's exposition, he seemed to have just comforted Juice WRLD on his sadness. It's like a continuous conversation. His songs are like one continuous conversation. He references his past works a lot. It isn't strange to reference past works, but he does it more frequently than others. In Agust D, he said something like, I'm the bastard that take the bastards who copy those who copy and jump over them, whether they're senior or junior. The bastard that I was, whether I'm whack or fake, I'm the one who carves history on the ground. Those two lines were originally from We Are Bulletproof Point 1. In 140503 at dawn, he used the beat of their song Rain. In Interlude Shadow, he said, at this moment, flying high as I wished, that shadow that had gotten even bigger from the glaring light. Please don't let me shine, don't let me down, don't let me fly. Now I'm afraid. This is actually connected to the Icarus imagery we got from the Wings album. In the same song, he also referenced their No More Dream song, specifically the lyrics, I want big cars, big house, and big rings. Suga the softie. He is known for being savage. But inside, he is really, really soft, and that shows in his lyrics and composition. Still, in Interlude Shadow, there are two words he used that are not usually used by adults. First is when he said, every day I was excited about how far I'd go. In the original Korean lyrics, he actually used the word solsochi, which is being excited about something, but it is usually used by children, innocent kids. In fact, it kind of feels like when you grow up, you lose the ability to feel that kind of emotion, and yet he used it here. Second, he alternated the use of now I'm afraid or duryo with I am scared or musuwo. But musuwo is actually rarely used by adults. Adults usually would just say afraid or turyowo. But the word musuwo is usually associated with childlike fear. The use of these two words could actually meant like he wasn't just recalling his hardships. He was literally traveling back in time, like he was reliving his younger years. There's a younger Suga in there. In Interlude Shadow, he said something like, "The moment I face my lowest self, unfortunately, I'm here in the blue sky. Please don't let me shine, don't let me down, don't let me fly. Now I'm scared, don't let me shine." He actually used the word mitbadak. Literally, this means ground or soil, the lowest of the low. When he said the moment I faced my lowest, he was actually implying he was still above the sky. But he could see the ground and he was about to crash hard. So it wasn't just about him feeling really, really low. It was him actually experiencing and being fully aware of the crash he was about to experience. Poetry in thoughts, not necessarily in words. Suga reeks of street vernacular. That's why so many underground rappers are intimidated by his success. The very first point I discussed was how he uses a consistent beat in his early songs, very much the style developed by many street rappers. Another thing he carried through was his use of everyday vernacular in his raps. He isn't the kind that would say, "That glorious layered red cotton spewed by nature's bosom." He would just say, "That's a rose." He wouldn't say, "In a realm of jewels and gems, you're a mere speck of smelly dust amidst them." He will just say, "You're a piece of shit." His poetry is his thoughts and ideas, his thoughts and the way that he makes sense of things. That's the beautiful part of his poetry. In SDL, for example, there was a line where he questioned, "Is it you that I miss? Or is it the time when regrets and regrets remain?" Doesn't it make you think all the people that left our lives and regret that they actually walked out of our lives? Is it really them that we miss, or just the feeling of having company? Even the sheer concept of amygdala is nothing short of genius. Amygdala, according to science, isn't necessarily an evil part of our brain. Its primary function is actually to help us form autonomic decision making in order to protect us. For example, if we have been bitten by a dog, it might help us develop our trauma against dogs. This will prevent us from getting bitten again. But of course, everything has a yin and yang. The other side of it is that we will, of course, miss the opportunity to care for such beautiful beings and experience the kind of loyalty and devotion very few humans can give. The moment he used that as a thread to his story, it automatically explains so many things. He effectively absolved or maybe even forgave everyone who did him wrong. It was his way of saying that one bad experience I had with you does not reflect on other people like you. In fact, it doesn't even represent the whole you. It encouraged people to take a good look at ourselves and really examine how we develop our fears, biases, stereotypes. It inspired so many people to examine where all this anger started, because only in dealing with how it began can we really make our future better.
So, Suga is definitely one of the most evolved in terms of songwriting, production, and composition. Primarily because it's inevitable. He's been doing it for a while. He's one of the 3 members who started producing and writing even before they debuted. And of course, with experience comes the inevitability of evolution. So he had to, any good artist worth their salt would of course experiment with new sound, with new genre, with new styles. And that's what he did. He experimented a lot. And so if you look at his discography, it's so prolific, so diverse, that it's almost sometimes impossible to believe that everything was actually just done by one artist. But as I've said, it's inevitable because he's been doing it for a while. So the other thing is that for a while he was actually pigeonholed. For some reason he was pigeonholed as an imagery kind of songwriter, which he has done, but that is not the only thing he has done. As I've said, he's one of the most prolific in the industry, global industry, not just in Korea. So the imagery is just one of the many things that he has done. The other thing is that because he's not just a songwriter, but he's also a composer. So he does the beat, the music, and the melody. And then he's also a producer. So his approach to production, song production, is so holistic that when he sits down, at least this is how I interpret this, when he sits down, he's not just thinking about what message am I going to deliver through the lyrics. He's actually looking at everything. And so when it's so whole, he looks at a song as he looks at a song or an art project in its totality, not just one aspect of it. So this is he's really an auteur. if I equate that to movie making, he has his hand on every aspect of his project, and he's serving the military now. I hope that he's enjoying. I'm sure every army also is hoping that. I hope that he's staying safe. But I believe because of his nature, he's so pensive. He's such a a very sensitive person. I believe that by the time he is picking up new things, he's learning new things in this new thing that he's doing, and all of this is going to contribute for him to become an even, if there's a word, fiercer kind of songwriter and musician. I think by the time that he comes out of the military, he's going to be so different in his style. He's going to try out new things that we would find it impossibly hard to identify or even believe that this is the kind of music that's coming out of Suga, because that's just what great artists do. They evolve. And I can't wait to see that. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any comments, suggestions, if you want to give your own opinion, please leave them in the comment section below. You know me, you can say whatever it is that you want to say for as long as you say it respectfully. You can also get in touch with me in any of the social media links. Please make sure to follow me on Twitter, because I'm going to evolve that, if I haven't already, that account to become an Asian entertainment and culture account. And all personal stuff, I'm just going to keep that on Instagram. All right, and please give this a like and subscribe and hit that notification button. Of course, share the video if you can. It's really helping my channel. I'm enjoying this. I hope you are too. I appreciate you guys. See you next time.